Mr. Edwards, we're going to ask you to speak up very loudly into the microphone. Okay. I would like to know in what state do you reside at the present time?
Louisiana.
And how old are you, sir?
32.
32? And you are single?
Yes.
And you were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on July the 22nd, 1991?
Yes.
And at or about that time, on that late afternoon, did you have occasion to see a person that you knew at that time or subsequently learned was a fellow by the name of Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yes.
And you know that Mr. Dahmer you're speaking about is the defendant in this case to my right, correct?
Yes.
And that made a record I showed the identification.
Sir, would you indicate where Mr. Dahmer is seated in the courtroom?
It's over there.
Right in the middle between my two associates?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
The record should reflect the defendant's been identified.
Now, Mr. Edwards, you and I met for the first time last evening.
Yes.
And you came up from Louisiana at my request with your attorney.
Right.
Mr. Syed, S-Y-E-D, Salet, S-A-L-E-T.
That's correct.
And you came up here to testify to the events, as you recall them, that occurred on the late afternoon, early evening, early morning hours of July the 22nd and the morning of July the 23rd, 1991.
That's correct.
So that you know, Mr. Edwards, your name is known to the jury because there has been testimony concerning what happened to you and at the apartment of Mr. Dahmer. Do you understand?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Where did you know Mr. Dahmer by name prior to that date?
I've seen him a couple of times before then. I didn't know his name personally.
All right. Did you ever talk to him before that date?
Speaking to him, saying hello as he passed by. Yeah.
Just casual, friendly?
Casual, yeah, friendly.
Hellos.
Hellos, yeah.
Where was it that you saw him in the late afternoon, early morning hours of July the 22nd?
Grand Avenue Mall.
And that was in Milwaukee.
Correct.
Downtown on Wisconsin Avenue.
Wisconsin, correct.
Were you with somebody or were you alone?
A couple of our friends, yeah.
Okay, so the record is absolutely clear. You are not a homosexual, are you?
No, not at all.
Okay. So you were with a couple of your buddies, were you?
That's correct.
And what were you doing?
We was drinking beer, just talking, hanging out, you know.
About 6 o'clock at night, was this?
Yeah, about 6:15, whatever.
Did you have occasion then to see Mr. Dahmer?
Yeah, he approached us eventually and started talking to us, yeah.
Were you three black males?
Yeah, one white, two black male.
Okay. So you're friends?
Yeah, my best friend was white, yeah.
When he came up and started talking to you, what is it that Mr. Dahmer said to you?
He said he was just in the city from Chicago. He was taking care of her sick grandmother, I believe, in West Allis. Yeah.
And did he have any further conversation with you and your friends?
Yeah, he was just talking. He said he was a professional photographer. He usually pays people for pictures and stuff like that if anybody was interested in making money at that time.
To pose for pictures?
Yeah.
Did he describe the kind of pictures that you were going to be posing for if you chose to take him up on the offer?
He said nude.
Nude.
Right.
Now, after he said that to you, what did you and your friends do?
They were just talking, discussing it, you know, seeing what was going on, yeah.
And what did you end up doing? Did you remain at Grand Avenue or did you go somewhere else?
We proceeded from there. He said he was going to buy all his guys beer, rum, and Coke, you know, watch videos or something like that.
Rum and Coke, did you say?
Yeah, we went to the liquor store on Wisconsin Avenue, 7th and Wisconsin Avenue.
So you walked from Grand Avenue down to 7th and Wisconsin?
Yeah, up, so to speak. Yeah,
at that
between
time,
5th and 6th, 7th, something like that.
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
The general area of 6th
Right.
or 7th in Wisconsin.
Right.
Was it going to be the three of you and Mr. Dahmer were going to stay together, or was it agreed upon that one or others of you were going to go with Mr. Dahmer, or was there no agreement?
They were going to meet up with us eventually later on that evening. Yeah.
Meet up with who?
Jeffrey at his apartment, but he gave them the wrong address at that time.
Okay, so did you, the three of you and your two friends and Mr. Dahmer, walk down to a liquor store, and what happened when you got to the liquor store?
I saw my brother. We started talking. At this time, Jeff was talking to my other friends.
So you say you saw your brother. He wasn't one of the three that you were with then?
No.
You saw him on the street?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had conversation.
Right.
Okay, did anyone go into a liquor store and buy anything?
Mr. Dahmer brought liquor. Yeah.
So he went
and
into a
beer.
liquor store?
Right.
And when he came out, who was still there?
Okay. When he came out, we were all still there.
And then what happened? Tell us what happened then.
Okay, he was talking to them. Then we were gonna go up the street. I was gonna go home and change and everything at this time. So we proceeded. We caught a cab at the bus station. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was your plan as you were in front of that liquor store after Mr. Dahmer came out with the liquor and you had been talking to your brother? What was your plan? What were you going to do? You say you were going to go home and change clothes?
Yeah, and eventually I was gonna go over there, you know, and maybe check out what he was talking about making the money at that time.
So your interest was in making some money?
Right.
Did he tell you how much you would be paid if you did pose for him?
He said $100 for.
You had no idea, did you, that this was for any homosexual
No,
conduct?
he didn't come across like that, and he didn't even act like it at that time.
Okay. So now your friends are still there, and you're going to go home and you order a cab for the over at the bus depot. What happens? Tell us what happens.
Okay, and then me and Dahmer, my friends said they're gonna go and change and call up the girls, and we'll meet up later on, you know. Yeah.
Was there an address given as to where you were going?
He gave them some address that wasn't correct, you know.
You later found that out?
Right, from my friends, yeah.
What happened then? Who else remained there when this was all transpired? Just you and Mr. Dahmer, or you, Mr. Dahmer, and others?
After it all had transpired, it was me and Mr. Dahmer in the cab, you know, leaving.
You met up at about 6 o'clock, 6:15. What time is it now, at this time?
It's maybe 6:30 as we get to 26th in Wisconsin.
So you stop at 26th in Wisconsin, and what happens there?
Okay, we get out the cab then, and then he suggested he go to the store and get cigarettes before he went to his apartment.
And after he did that, did you go to his apartment?
Yeah.
What route?
Through the alleys, through the back way. We entered the back.
Was there any discussion as to why you were taking that route?
Said it was safer, people wouldn't bother us or whatever.
At the time that you were walking with him towards his apartment, what was your plans on doing when you got to the apartment?
Really drinking the beer, I wasn't really sure if I was going to pose or not, you know. Yep, I wasn't really sure at that point. No.
You at least were contemplating maybe you would.
Yeah, I was going to make up my mind once I got there or whatever, you know.
Were you in need of money?
Yeah, I just started working and the offer sounded good at that time.
Okay. Now, when you got to his apartment, how was he acting? Tell us about his... tell me about his demeanor. You know what I mean by that, Mr. Edwards?
Yes,
how was he
understand.
acting?
Just like a normal, everyday person, you know, friendly, good conversationalist. He was talking about the military, things of that nature, yeah.
Had you been in the military?
My father retired in the Air Force, so I've been to several different bases. I was born on an Army base in Fort Carson.
And that's the kind of thing you were talking to him
It's
about.
like a family thing, you know, so I know a lot about it.
Had he been drinking alcohol?
Yeah, I consumed some. He was drinking beer at the time when I first
Well,
met.
the time that you were like going to his apartment, was he intoxicated?
No.
Had he been drinking?
Yeah, I've been drinking a couple of beers.
How about you? Were you intoxicated?
No, not at all.
Had you had something to drink?
I sipped maybe a little beer of my friend's beer, that was it.
All right, now you get to the apartment. Do you go in the back way?
Yes, correct.
You went up to the apartment. Tell us what happens when you get up to the apartment. Tell us what you observed, what your senses told you.
Okay, first of all, it seemed like a normal apartment. When we got inside, he turned off burglar alarms. I asked him why. First, it was a foul odor, okay?
Tell us about that. What kind of an odor?
It was just like an odor. I didn't quite know what it was. You know, he told me a sewer pipe had broke and management would take care of it. You know.
And did you accept that?
Yes, because I worked around at construction companies before, and when pipes bust, sewer pipes bust, they smell, you know.
Okay.
So I brought that.
So you say your first thing you did was notice the odor. He opened the door to the apartment?
Yes,
And you walked in.
yes.
He turned off something. What did he turn off?
Alarms.
Did you ask him about that?
Yeah, and he said the part of the neighborhood he was in, he was protecting his property, things like that, cameras, VCRs, TVs, things of that nature.
Did you accept that?
Yes, I did.
After getting in the apartment, can you generally describe the apartment, both the apartment that you saw then and the apartment that the other parts of the apartment you saw? Tell the jury what the apartment was like.
It was like normal, pretty decent apartment, had nice things in it. You know, it had certain boxes sitting on the front, neurotic acid boxes. I asked him about it. He said he cleaned bricks with those, you know, which you can use that type of acid to clean bricks. So I brought that also.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you just said. You asked him about some boxes,
Yeah, that were laying in the front living room floor.
and what did he tell you about those?
That he cleaned brick with the neurotic acid.
Okay. Now, was the apartment small, large, medium? What? Give us the size.
Kind of medium size, yeah.
Right. Now, when you went in there, you went in, as you entered, were you in the living room?
Yes.
And what was the living room? What did you see in there? The boxes you told us about?
Boxes is a couch. There's a fish tank there also. A black lamp. Yeah, there was a little table-like on the left side.
Could you see a refrigerator?
Yeah, I could see the refrigerator on my left.
Was it close to the living room?
Yeah, maybe 8 feet from the living room.
And so it was just off the living room.
Right.
Now, did you stay in that room, or did you go to another room right away?
We stayed in that room for a while.
And where did you sit, if you did?
Okay, at the end of the sofa like I am now, this is a sofa. I was at this end, and he was at this side.
Referring to the the witness box, if that were a sofa, he would be at that end. That is the end where he's seated on the witness stand, which would be the part closest to the judge. Is that right?
That's correct.
And where did Mr. Dahmer, what did he do?
He sat like here, maybe a couple feet from me.
Not
on my
close
left.
to you.
Maybe 2 feet.
You in fear of anything at that time?
Not at all.
Okay, and what did the two of you do?
Okay, he said we were still talking, chatting, you know. He asked me, was I interested in doing the photography? You know, I told him I was still contemplating, so therefore he offered me a beer and a rum and coke mixture at that point.
Now, you're fully clothed,
Yes,
okay, and you're sitting on a couch,
right.
and he talks to you about this posing. You weren't sure you're going to do it.
Right.
How much had you been offered to do the posing?
$100.
Okay, and when he brings you the beer, he brings you rum and coke?
Yeah, he brings the beer first, and then he brings the rum and coke.
How big of a glass?
Maybe that big. Yeah.
About 4 inches high?
About 4 inches, yeah, 3.5, something like that.
Did you ever taste it?
Yeah, I took a few sips.
Was it strong, weak, medium, or just about right?
I'm not a big liquor drinker, so it didn't taste that good to me. I don't.
Didn't taste good to you? You don't know if it was strong or not?
Strong or not, no, because I'm...
What did Mr. Dahmer do? Did he likewise have a drink?
I think, yeah, right, a beer, but I don't think he drank all of his drink at that time.
Did he have any rum with him?
I just noticed the beer, right.
What time are we talking about now that you're sitting on the couch and you get the beer? You got over there about what time, and how long after this?
It was about before 7, 6:45, something like that.
So you're sitting on the couch, he brings you a beer and rum and coke, what happens?
Okay, then we just study talking and everything, you know.
General talk?
General talk. Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah, then I was just, I don't know, getting a little agitated maybe, you know, because of the smell and things. And then he threw my conversation off talking about the fish in the fish tank, you know.
Okay, when you start talking about the fish in the fish tank, do you bring that up or does he?
He does.
And what do you do when he does that?
I turn to the right, like the fish tank is here, I'm turning all the way over here.
You turn to your right to look at it?
To look at the fish tank, right.
And when that happens, what happens to you?
All of a sudden a handcuff and a knife is pulled on me. Yeah.
Handcuff is placed on your body? Where?
On my left wrist.
And you see a knife?
Yeah, the knife, yeah.
Now, at that moment, what do you do?
First I feel fear, then I ask him what's going on, you know. This is not necessary, you know, to pull a knife on me at that
Are you
point.
afraid?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to know why he did that?
None whatsoever.
Did you have any idea at that time it was going to happen?
No.
Tell me about his demeanor at that time when you looked and realized he had a knife and you in a cuff. You were only cuffed on one wrist.
One wrist, yeah.
What was happening to the other part of the handcuff?
Okay, he had it in his hand.
He was holding it.
Holding that in the wrist, yeah.
Where was the knife? In the other hand?
The knife was like he had here. The knife was in his hand. He had it on me like this.
Let the record reflect he was holding the knife in his right hand as he showed it, holding the cuff in his left hand. Is that right?
Right.
And your left hand is cuffed.
Yeah, right.
Where do you have the knife? What kind of a knife was it?
It was like a military knife, a machete or some type. He had lowered right up under my rib cage, Like
So
in
he
the
had
back, somewhere in the back here.
He had it pointed at your rib cage.
Yeah.
Did you feel it? Touch
Yeah,
it?
he had it on me. He had it against my body.
What happened? What was going through your mind the moment that happened when you realized you had a knife at your side and a handcuff on your hand? What did you think?
I think like, what's going on, This guy is so nice and all of a sudden, it's like he's pulling knives and handcuffs and all on me,
What'd you do? What'd you say to him?
I asked him what the problem was, that it's not necessary to do this,
What'd he say?
He told me at that point if I wouldn't do what he said, he would kill me,
Now, tell us about his demeanor at the time that you look at him and you say, what's going on? You don't have to do this. What happens to Mr. Dahmer? What's he like?
It's like not the same person that we met at Grand Avenue Mall.
How does he different?
His face structure seemed different, his body structure is like it wasn't him anymore, It's like it was a totally different guy there.
So he told you if you didn't do what he told you to do, he'd hurt you.
He hurt me.
What'd you do? What happened? Tell us what happened step by step as best you can
And
remember.
then all of a sudden he kind of calms down, and then he said he has a key in the bedroom, so we proceed to the bedroom.
The key to the handcuffs.
Right.
So you believed he was going to take them off?
Yeah, at that point I had to go along with this guy, and then if I had to find out, so I walked back there with him. He kind of guides me back there,
Guides you back with the cuff and the knife?
Yeah, right.
And you go into the bedroom.
Right.
What do you see in the bedroom?
A big, about 50, 60 gallon drum barrel, whatever.
Do you ever see a 50, 60 drum barrel in anybody's bedroom
No.
before?
Not at all.
Do you have any idea? Did you ask him what it was?
No, at that point I asked no questions at that time.
Was there a bed in that room?
Yes.
How was the bed? Was it made, unmade? What did
It
what
was,
op-
it was unmade.
what did you see on the bed, if anything?
Something like a stain of whatever on the bed.
What did you think it was?
At that point in time, I wasn't sure.
What did you do when you got in the bedroom as he's holding on to the cuff and the knife? What did you do?
Studied us talking, trying to be friends with him,
Did you remain standing? Did you sit down?
Oh, he made me sit down at that point. We both sit on the bed.
Was it at the foot of the bed, side of the bed, head of the bed?
Maybe halfway between.
Did that room have a TV set in it?
Yes.
Was there anything going on the TV?
Yeah, the Exorcist movies was playing at that time.
There was an Exorcist movie on.
Yeah.
You know which one of them?
The name, I'm not sure. I think it's 3. I'm not sure which one.
So there was a movie. Did you know it to be part of television or a VCR?
VCR, normally that's not on regular television, so I thought it was VCR.
You knew there was a movie showing.
Right.
Did you see him put it on, or was it on?
No. When we first got into the apartment, he went through the back to the back bedroom. Maybe he put it on then. I'm not sure.
Okay. And then what happened? You're both sitting on the bed?
Yes.
Are you still in handcuffs?
Yes.
Is he holding the handcuff?
Right.
Do you still have the knife?
Right.
Is it pointed at your side as you've told us before?
Right.
You trying to be cool?
Very much so.
You're not fighting with him?
No. Not
What's
at
your intention? What are you planning on doing?
all. Getting away, I was contemplating on at the point jumping out the window. Yep. I was basically talking with this person, trying to let him know I was his friend. Yeah.
As you were sitting there on the bed, when he had you by the handcuff and a knife at your side, at that time, which would have been maybe 7 o'clock,
Something like that.
what impression was made upon your mind by the conduct, action, manner, expression, and conversation that you observed of Mr. Dahmer?
His frame of mind is what you want to know, right? Okay, he acted. At times, he would go through like different changes with me,
Tell us about that.
1 minute he's like nice, then he was telling he didn't want people to leave him or abandon him, things of this nature, Yeah.
Well, what did you think about him as a person? What impression was made on your mind of this fellow that you're dealing with here?
Yeah. That at times he wasn't himself, and then at times he was like a nice guy, He would come and go different times, throughout the whole time. Then he would like sit, being quiet at times, watching a movie, wanting me to watch the movie, and just doing little tanning sounds,
Did you observe him watching the movie and how he would react to the movie?
Right, he would like just start rocking back and forth when he, certain parts of the movie or whatever.
And you have to say, what did he say, Madam?
It was like chanting in certain times and rocking back and forth, right?
Tell us about his chanting. What was that all about?
I'm not even sure, sir, but it was just like, I can't tell you the words. I couldn't understand what he was saying at that time.
Can you mimic him? How it sounded?
It was like a slow slur, like, some of that nature, something close like that, I'm not sure.
Did it keep on for a period of time?
Off and on throughout the ordeal.
And how about the movement back and forth? How was that being effectuated?
Just like back and forth, he would do it every now and then.
Just as you are rocking in your chair?
Like this.
And chanting?
And chanting.
Was there any parts of the movie that was going on that you saw that he said anything about?
It was like the part about the preacher that used to be a preacher that had got possessed, and that it would seem like he was like interested in that part. That part had his attention more than anything.
But tell us about what you mean by that. What impressions were made upon your mind when this was going on as to had his attention? How did he appear to you?
It appeared like it was like he wanted to mimic it or be like that part, being demonized or whatever in that nature.
I'm sorry, I missed you.
Yeah, like he wanted that type of movie, that part, certain parts of that part interested him. It was like he changed with it at times. Then he would get more aggressive, try to get me to handcuff myself, both hands. And he's told me it made him feel more dominant at that time.
Okay, did you and he move off of the bed at any time?
Yes, he wanted me to lay flat down, stomach down on the floor at that time.
Did you at any time go to the bathroom, use the washroom, prior to the time that he asked you to lay down on the floor?
No.
All right, tell us what happened how did that happen that he told you to lay down on the floor?
He told me to lay down, face down, put both of my hands behind my back because he changed again at that point, like he got more aggressive at that time.
Okay, now, but tell us, did he still have the knife out?
Yes, he still had the knife with him.
And what did you do?
Okay, I kind of like laid on my sides. For some reason, I guess God told me not to lay flat down or let this person handcuff me, so I didn't.
So you were trying to stop that from happening, but you got down on the floor.
Right.
What did he do?
He kind of laid across me, put his head across my chest at that point.
And what was he doing with his head?
Pardon me?
What did it appear to you he was doing with his head? What was he trying to do?
Like he was listening to my heart, because at a point he told me he was going to eat my heart at that point.
He said he was going to eat your heart?
Yes, that's correct.
Did he still have the knife?
Yeah.
Where was the knife pointed?
When I was on the floor, he had it pointed at my groin area at that time.
One knife?
He had several, and then he slipped one. I managed to slide one underneath the bed. And I guess during a point of time through an ordeal, he didn't know where the knife was, so I didn't know if he felt that was a threat or not.
So he still had a knife, you're on the floor. How long does he lay on top of you trying to hear your heart as you've described it?
Maybe a minute, minute and a half.
And then what did you do then?
I knew something was about to happen, so I suggested that I go to the bathroom. I had to use the bathroom at that time.
And what did he do?
He kind of guided me to the bathroom.
So when you say he guided, you still had hold of your handcuff?
Yes.
And you went to the bathroom?
Right.
Did you urinate?
Yeah.
Were you able to utilize your own zipper, or did he touch you at all?
Touched me in no way. Didn't attempt to look. He just held me in back.
So in other words, he didn't try to look at what your penis looked like or anything?
Not at all.
So after urinating, did you think that you were going to be the victim of... Did he ask to engage in any homosexual acts with you?
None whatsoever.
Okay, so now you leave the bathroom and what happens?
Okay, then we go back into the bedroom. It was like different time spans. We were talking about him losing his job. Then he would come to the person that I was first with, and then at certain points he would change. At first he was telling me about how people didn't care for him and things of this nature, and I was trying to comfort him, letting him know that I was a friend, that I wasn't going to try to run away from him or nothing like that.
You were being cool.
I guess God, you can say that, because I had no control. I don't know.
Did this continue on for a long period of time during the night?
Yes, apparently so. Time seemed to, I don't know. But I stayed in there that long, so it had to be going on throughout the whole ordeal, which it was. So time just, It happened like that.
And all this time, you're trying to hold him down.
Yeah, certain points, right.
How often would he go in and out of these moods?
Sir, the time spans I couldn't really tell you, but like he would like, I guess if you want to put it together in time, every 30 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that, you know, and then he would have moods of being just silent, you know, and I wouldn't say anything, try to provoke him or say the wrong thing. I would be silent with him.
Okay. So you just let him be alone. Was that movie on the whole time, a long time?
It was on a pretty good period of time, yeah, and when it went off, I couldn't tell you.
Did he continue to chant from time to time?
Yes, it happened several times throughout the ordeal.
Now, when he would watch the movie, did you notice when he would go into this thing that you told us where he would really become fixed on the movie screen? What was happening? How often would that happen?
Throughout the movie, maybe every 15 or 20 minutes, and then he would turn around and try to ask me to put both of my hands behind my back, and I wouldn't, you know, do it. I would talk to him. I'd tell him, you can trust me, you know, you don't have to do this, and that would calm him down a little bit.
He had the knife the whole time.
Right.
He's watching the movie, and he becomes very interested in the movie.
Right.
You don't do anything, just sit there.
Just sit there and be quiet.
And then he would start conversation with you again.
Yeah, he was like you're gonna have to do this and that, you know. Then he told me at a point I was gonna have to kill him, or he was gonna have to kill me at one point.
Were you and he drinking during this time?
No.
So he wasn't running out, bringing you out and getting beers and coming back?
No, I would have been out the window at that point.
Sure.
If he would have.
Did he, when he was fixed, I'm trying to get some words to understand, was he intoxicated?
He had been drinking, but as far as being intoxicated, he was not staggering or anything of that nature.
But you know that some people, when they have too much to drink, change their moods. Was that the kind of mood changes he was having, or a different kind of mood change?
I think this was like more of an inner mood change than an alcoholic mood change.
What kind of mood?
It's like
Inner mood?
yeah, a person change, not alcohol change.
What did you think about this guy? What was going through your mind as to who you were sitting next to, who was doing all these things?
A bizarre individual, someone that was very confused at this time.
Now, there came a time when you went to the washroom again?
Right, I suggested, yeah, because he had started getting aggressive a little bit again. I suggested go to the bathroom. He let me stay in there by myself while he stayed outside the door at that time.
And what happened then?
And then I told him, well, I was contemplating, I was asking God, shall I make my move now? And I was going to just jump out the window. But when I got out, for some reason, I asked, could I have another beer? Yeah.
And what did he do?
And he reaches over, he guides me over and reaches in and get a beer.
He still got you on the cuff?
Yeah, and then he tells me, I told him I want to sit in the front because it's an air conditioner. I was just going to try to jump out the window or go for the door or whatever, and because the back bedroom didn't have an air conditioner, only in the front. So I suggested we sit on the couch. I had unbuttoned my shirt to try to make him feel more at ease. And then I just sat on the couch and he just started going out of himself again. Yeah.
Going out of himself?
Yeah, he was like paying me no attention at that time.
Like he wasn't there?
Yeah, he started the chanting again and it's like just sitting there, you know. And then I just, for some reason, I said, well, I need to go to the bathroom again, and he didn't follow me at that point. So I reached up, I got up, and then I hit him, and I ran out.
So you hit him?
Right.
Did you have any other belongings there?
I have my bag right there at the end of the couch. I sit in exactly the same place that I sit when I went in there.
So when you got up, he let go of your cuff to let you go to the bathroom again?
He just let me stay there. I was going to go for the window. At that point, he didn't even have the cuff. It's like I wasn't even there anymore.
And when you saw that, what'd you do?
I just seized the opportunity. I said, well, at least I'm going to die trying. I'm not just going to sit here, you know.
What'd you do, son?
I hit him, and I ran towards the door, and he was right there, tried to grab me, get me back in there.
And what happened?
Then I made it outside.
So he wasn't able to bring you back in?
Bring me back in there, no.
He tried?
He tried.
And as you left that apartment, as you got away from him, I'm going to ask you again, what impressions were made on your mind by the conduct of Jeffrey Dahmer, by the actions of Jeffrey Dahmer, by the manner, expressions, and conversations of Jeffrey Dahmer that you observed? Can you give us some words?
And it's like I told the policeman that this freak, this crazy guy, was trying to hurt me. Yeah.
Did you run out of the building?
Yes, I did.
Did you summon help?
Yes,
Milwaukee Police Department?
that's correct.
Did they come back there with you to the apartment?
Right.
Did you eventually go back into the apartment with the Milwaukee police officers?
Yes.
And then he was arrested.
Right.
You gave a statement to the Milwaukee police a few hours later?
Yeah. Guess you could say a few hours. Yeah.
Mr. Edwards, through your lawyer, I had you come to Wisconsin to testify.
That's correct.
Other than your expenses, you're not being paid anything,
No.
correct? Is that true?
That's true.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you.
Mr. McCann, how long do we anticipate the cross-examination of this witness will
I'd say
take?
at least half an hour, Your Honor.
Okay. That being the case, I think it's appropriate that we take a recess at this time, about 15 minutes. Court's in recess.
Please see it, please. We have to wait a moment for the reporter.
Mr. Boyle, go ahead.
At this time, Your Honor, since I was busy on other matters, and I didn't wish to take any more of the court's time by asking for additional time, I had my associate, Scott Hansen, prepare the proffer of proof relative to Mr. Ressler being a hypothetical expert witness, and I asked Mr. Hansen to make an oral proffer of proof to effectuate that, because I think I know which way the court is leaning, and I don't want to take up more time than is necessary to put it on the record, so I'm going to have Mr. Hansen to flip it.
Your Honor, if it pleases the court, the first thing that I'd like to do is have marked as an exhibit Mr. Ressler's statement of personal data. It's been marked as defendant's exhibit number 21, and I'll show that to you. And I will...
Any objection to Exhibit 21 being received in evidence?
No, sir. I believe he has a copy of that already. I would offer that to the court as part of our offer of proof. I would indicate that if called to testify, obviously, Mr. Ressler would indicate in his testimony that all of the information contained in that statement of personal data is true and correct. The information relative to his background with the FBI has already been made a part of the record. I won't reiterate that. However, as part of our offer of proof, I would indicate that during the time that he was with the FBI, one of the main projects that Mr. Ressler worked on was an extensive study of 36 serial and sexual killers with 118 known victims and 250 suspected victims. The study was conducted from 1977 to 1984 with follow-up work which continues to the present date. That as part of that initial study, Mr. Ressler personally interviewed at least a third of the killers studied in that study, including such serial and sexual killers as John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, David Berkowitz, who's also known as the Son of Sam killer, Edmund Kemper, Richard Chase, Herbert Mullen, Richard Speck, and others. That since that initial study, he's personally interviewed additional serial killers, sexual killers, and other violent criminals. That as a result of all of his research, Mr. Ressler has developed expertise in classifying sexual and serial killers as being either organized, disorganized, or mixed. That if he were asked a hypothetical question which this will take me some time to get out because obviously there are a number of assumptions that would have to be included in this hypothetical question. I'm going to list all of the assumptions that would be included in that hypothetical question. They would be as follows: that if there were an individual whose identity were unknown, who was known to have committed 17 murders, including one in 1978, one in 1987, two in 1988, one in 1989, 4 in 1990, and 8 in 1991. That some, including the first 2 of those, were spontaneous, others were planned, that all but one were committed at his residence, that almost all were committed by strangulation, that he used drugs to incapacitate his victims, that he engaged in no sadistic acts, that he engaged in sex acts with the victims after death, including masturbating on and into the bodies, that he cut open and dismembered the bodies, that he disposed of body parts in the trash at his residence, that he kept skulls and body parts from most of his victims and masturbated using them, that towards the end he left bodies and body parts in his apartment where a visitor could easily find them, that his crime scene was sloppy with blood and body parts left around the apartment, that he took photos of his victims to relive his fantasies, that he consumed the body parts of some of his victims, that with several of his later victims he drilled holes in their heads while drugged and poured liquid into their skulls in an effort to create a zombie who would follow his wishes, that as his crimes progressed they increased in frequency and sloppiness, that the sloppiness included inviting a victim into his apartment while the body of a previous victim was still there, that the sloppiness also included leaving a victim in a drugged but unrestrained situation in his apartment for several hours while he was not present, and also that he tended to depersonalize his victims, tried not to get to know them by name. If Mr. Ressler were given a hypothetical question making those assumptions and asking whether he were able, using those assumptions, to determine or form an opinion to a reasonable degree of professional certainty as to whether that killer would be classified as organized, disorganized, or mixed. Our offer of proof is that Mr. Ressler gravitating downward towards a disorganized classification, particularly in the last year of his crimes, that Mr. Ressler's testimony would be that the crimes show an increasing mental decompensation by the end of his crimes. Also, Your Honor, I would offer the following additional information, which is that Mr. Ressler would also be willing to testify that he has personally interviewed the defendant, Jeffrey Dahmer, that he's reviewed police reports and other documents relating to this case, and that based upon his personal knowledge of the defendant and the defendant's activities, that he would classify a person in the hypothetical question that I just stated, and that again this conclusion would be to a reasonable degree of professional certainty. Mr. Ressler would also testify that based upon his knowledge and experience, he knows that killers who are organized are normally found by psychiatrists to be antisocial, and that killers who are disorganized are normally found by psychiatrists to be suffering from some mental illness. That concludes our offer of proof.
Could I just very briefly have Dr. Stewart sworn? I will take less than 5 minutes. Who has your vitae with you, Doctor?
No, sir.
You have examined that which has been marked as State's Exhibit 18, which is your vitae, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that vitae accurate?
It is not, it has no inaccuracies on it. It is not completely up to date.
And what have you done in the last 2 years to add to it, just very briefly?
I have published papers in an international journal that has to do with corporate crime, and I have published additional work on the mentally disordered in the criminal justice system that has appeared in the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology.
If it pleases the court, Mr. Boyle will stipulate to the vitae of Dr. Stewart, and I will submit that to the court for admission into evidence of State's Exhibit 18. If you are presently...
That's your vitae? I don't have any problem.
It's received.
You are presently teaching at the University of Wisconsin. You're on that faculty, is that correct?
Yes, I am. On the
Tell us, sorry.
on the Faculty of Criminal Justice.
Have you had anything to do with statistics in connection with that work?
Yes, I have. I teach statistics on the undergraduate and graduate level.
On this present semester, are you on leave of some type this semester?
It's not a formal leave. I am not in the classroom because I have administrative-like duties.
At my request, you've examined certain documents and indeed got a document of your own. Is that correct?
Yes.
I would ask you to examine that which has been marked as State's Exhibits, which will show that Mr. Boyle, Exhibit number 24, number 22, and number 23. Have you examined these exhibits?
Yes.
Have you examined also portions of a book entitled Sexual Homicide Patterns and Motives by Robert K. Ressler and others?
Yes, I looked at Chapter 8.
I would ask leave of the court if I could. This is not on my book. If we could copy particularly Chapter 8 and submit it to the court as an exhibit. That would be exhibit number 25, I believe.
Problem between that for the purpose of...
Dr. Story, at my request, you've examined those documents drawn on your own experience, and can you advise the court of what validity there would be with respect to applying a profiling data to the issue before the court today?
I think it would be a misapplication. It would be unscientific in that application. A typology is a way of summarizing information. It's understandable that one would want to use a summary when there is missing data. When there is no missing data, it does not make sense in many instances to use such a summary. I think it would be like walking backward in order to go forward.
And the information on the profiling, particularly the 36 cases that form the basis of 36 serial killers, is that much of a database in your opinion?
No, it is not, especially when you consider that it may be, well, it is only 25 that apply to serial killers, and we're not sure which of those 25 fall into each of those disorganized and organized and mixed categories.
And does the information that you have on that study indicate that with respect to the 12 that were disorganized, they all involved heterosexual serial killers?
That is what the report indicates, yes.
Do you have any other comment that you wish to make on this study and its proposed application?
Yes, I think that as it is presented in the reports, the characterization of disorganized and organized is drawn only from the crime scene information, and that there is very little in the way of any scientific link to the personality types.
Please, the court,
I'd like for the record to ask Dr. a few questions.
Absolutely.
Doctor, did you ever talk to Mr. Ressler about his book?
No, I never have met him until today.
Did you ever make inquiry of anyone in the FBI Behavioral Science Unit as to how they use the concept of organized, disorganized, and mixed?
No, I did not.
So you've never talked to anyone in law enforcement about the concept?
No, I have not.
Prior to today, how many times have you ever discussed the matter of the disorganized, organized, mixed concept reference to the detection of people who may have, maybe profiled for law enforcement in determining who the criminal might be?
I have never had occasion to use those exact terms.
Have you ever testified as an expert in a criminal case?
Never.
You are indicating that the database is too small for behavioral science people to come up with a concept that you feel can be statistically warranted, is that correct?
It is an extremely small database. It does suggest that any findings might be unreliable. It is not something that a social scientist would be comfortable with.
And is that because there aren't enough serial killers to study to come up with a larger database in order to come up with better statistical data?
That's certainly one factor.
So the people in the FBI Behavioral Science Lab, who since 1978 through 1990 were developing some concept to assist local law enforcement, were more apt to come up with false data than correct data as it relates to the mixed organized and disorganized concepts that are promulgated by Mr. Ressler?
Would you rephrase?
Let me ask you, Mike. Because the database is 25 or 36, and because the database isn't any larger than that, simply because there haven't been enough people to study who have been serial killers, that their attempts to come up with some ideas relative to the mixed, disorganized, and organized may have been an exercise in futility?
It depends on the use to which it is put, I think.
Let us assume, Doctor, that every heterosexual serial killer that is studied is between 30 and 40 years of age on the basis of a database of 36 studies. Would that not be statistically the sound thing for one to promulgate for purposes of coming up with some ideas as to who and what age serial killers might be?
I have to answer that. I think in your question, you're mixing apples and oranges.
I've heard that before.
My response would have to be that if, on the basis of that study, one were to predict that every serial killer was between 30 and 40 years of age, that is a lousy basis for prediction.
Lousy?
Yes, very poor.
Now, you know, based upon your knowledge and experience, that a chapter of a book is not necessarily a complete and total exhaustion of everything relative to the subject matter in the book.
That's correct.
You're aware of that. And you're aware, are you, of the reputation of Mr. Wrestler?
I am aware that he has a reputation of being a speaker on this subject.
Do you know who the other two people are, to which Johnny Douglas, who is also a co-author on the same book that Mr. Wrestler is a co-author on?
I do not know John Douglas.
Well, Mr. McCann asked you if you knew of, he said, Mr. Wrestler and others, did you look at the, what do they call this, the fly cover, and see that John Douglas is a supervisory special agent of the FBI and serves as program manager of the Bureau of Criminal Investigation Analysis Program, where he supervises a staff of investigative profiles who provide support to law enforcement agencies worldwide. He is also an adjunct faculty member at several major universities. Did you read that?
Yes, I read that.
Did you know him to be the same Mr. Douglas that Mr. McCann quoted today as saying that he has never ever heard? I think it's the same Mr. Douglas, correct me if I'm wrong. If you can't answer, tell me. When I tried to proffer Mr. Wrestler that he said Mr. Douglas, who's presently with the FBI, has never heard this ever being attempted before. You hear that statement?
I heard him say that in court today.
That same Mr. Douglas?
I don't really know. I made the same presumption.
You know what it is? Is it the same Mr. Douglas?
So it is, I think if I did, I indicated, I meant to indicate certainly successfully attempted. Whether it's been attempted or not, I do not know.
Well, you have never written a book concerning studies of people who committed violent crimes in the nature of homicide.
No, I have not written such a book.
Have you ever done any study?
Not on people who specifically commit violent crimes, except I am involved in one presently. It is not finished.
Can you tell us how many people you have talked to, without identifying them, how many people you have talked to who have either been accused of or convicted of or charged with the crime of murder one?
I think probably none.
You never talked to a serial killer?
Not that I was aware of.
You have no degree in psychology, do you?
No, sir, I do not.
Have you done any postgraduate studies in the field of clinical psychology?
No, sir.
How about forensic psychology?
Well, could you be more specific about the kind of study you're...
Have you taken any, have you done any study in the area of forensic psychology?
I'll say no.
Has anybody brought to your attention, in anticipation of your testifying here today, concerning the concepts that you said are not of great moment, that is, that which is contained in Chapter 6? Has anybody brought to your attention that any psychiatrist or any psychologist has ever used such data, the kind of which formulated by Mr. Wrestler, and found it to be very helpful in the exercise of their profession in trying to understand serial killers and the minds of serial killers? Has anybody brought that to your attention?
No, and just to make the record straight, we were talking about Chapter 8,
Okay.
not Chapter 6.
Chapter 8 is the chapter on organized, disorganized.
That's correct.
Now, you say that you don't agree with that because of the database or because of the concept, which?
No, I had not spoken as to the concept itself. I was saying that a typology of this nature, based on such little evidence, is very risky to use that as a tool for classification. Social scientists would not do that.
Assume that the database will never get larger than 50. Would any such study relative to 50 serial killers as promulgated in the sexual homicide book that we're talking about here, as contained in Chapter 8, be of any value for social scientists?
Not in terms of prediction or classification.
And if law enforcement and psychologists, forensic and otherwise, and psychiatrists, forensics and otherwise, are using that data, they are using a false base.
I think they are using an unreliable base. In the investigatory process, I think there's sometimes need to grasp at straws. I understand that use of this in the investigatory process.
But it's still grasping at straws.
Yes.
So from 78 to 90, in spite of or because of the small database, they were really performing an exercise in futility or guesswork for the most part.
If what they were doing was establishing a profile for use when there is almost nothing else to go on, I would not be critical of it.
That's all.
Just 2 or 3 questions, if it please the court. You're not criticizing it simply as a profiling, attempting to help the police in a broad way in looking for an unknown person, is that correct?
That's correct.
Would you turn to the exhibit that says the men who murdered? Turn to the second last page of deviant behavior.
Tell us who wrote that with you.
It's an FBI publication, Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Yeah, but is there an author?
No. It captured the men who murdered. You see that on the second to last page under deviant behaviors? Would you read into the record the last sentence under the second sentence as the last sentence in that paragraph?
It starts with C figure 1.
No, it starts with deviant behavior.
Yes. The deviant behavior identified at the crime scene provides some clues for understanding the type of criminal personality responsible for the crime.
Right. A clue is a clue, is that correct?
Yes.
That's not a definition, is it?
No.
Well, just so the record's clear, that was limited to crime scene.
That's,
The words you just read said crime scene.
yes, which was my point earlier.
Well, Mr. Wrestler, if you heard the proper proof, was not just crime scene analysis.
Yes, I understand that. But the work that shows up in print is based on crime scene analysis.
What you're doing is you're doing a critical comment on crime scene analysis for the mixed, disorganized, and organized as being sufficiently for one to be able to make an opinion to a reasonable degree of professional certainty because statistically the database is too small. Is that what you're saying?
I think so.
Well, how about the total concept where the same person who uses crime scene, personality profile, investigation of the minds of other like serial killers, and who draws from that and comes up with a profile? Same problem with that because of the database?
Yes.
So in order, if I understand, in order for someone to do this the right way, they're going to have to wait until there's a sufficient number of serial killers to see if there's a common bond between all of them, so that a social statistician might be able to say, now the database is large enough, so if you use it, it's got some meaning to social science. I know you don't support that, but basically that's what you're saying.
I'm saying that it takes much more to use a typology predictively than what exists here.
That's all, thank you.
That's all. I'd like to move those exhibits into evidence subject to our copying that particular portion of the book and marking it and putting it in there.
Yeah, they'll be received for the purpose of...
got that. Yep. You can use that.
If we have, we'll submit it to the court today.
They're received for the purpose of preserving the records, Doc. I would, first of all, the court has not heard anything to cause it to change its original ruling. The court would like to add something to that ruling. The offer of proof was in the form of a proposed hypothetical question. Standard criminal jury instruction 205 is entitled Expert Testimony Hypothetical Question. It reads as follows. During the trial, an expert witness was told to assume that certain facts were true and then was asked for an opinion based upon those assumptions. This is called a hypothetical question. Such an opinion should be considered only to the extent that the assumed facts upon which it is based are true and correct. Such an opinion does not establish the truth of the facts upon which it is based. If you find that the facts stated in the hypothetical question have not been proved, then the opinion based thereon is not to be given any weight. In the law notes in connection with that instruction, there is this language. A hypothetical question may be based on facts not yet in evidence. However, at the conclusion of testimony, every assumption in which the hypothetical question is based must be supported by facts and evidence. And to that, it cites its authority, Novitzke, N-O-V-I-T-Z-K-E v. State, reported at 92 Wisconsin 2nd, page 302, a 1979 case, and Rabata, R-A-B-A-T-A v. Dahmer, D-O-H-N-E-R, 45 Wisconsin 2nd at page 111, a 1969 case. The significance of this is one of the assumptions was that there is an unknown defendant. That's not the case here.
With all due respect, you all have to make records. I would like to tell the court that the phraseology of the hypothetical question, if it was objectionable for that reason, could have been rephrased to accomplish the same result. It is not necessary that the hypothetical contain the identity of the serial killer, one way or the other, in order to make it a legitimate hypothetical. Detective Murphy, continuing on with the balance of this confession, it's accurate to say we're about 6/7 of the way through it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you go to page 137? I believe that's where we stopped. And there was a discussion in your presence, was there not, with West Dallas Police Department's presence as it relates to the victim of Mr. Dockstader?
Yes, there was.
Would you tell us what was said during that conversation with Mr. Dock?
They asked numerous questions regarding the identification of James Dockstader, and upon viewing identification division photographs of James Dockstader, Mr. Dahmer stated he was approximately 75% sure that this was a Hispanic male that he met at the bus stop by the 219 Club sometime in January of 1988.
Let me see if I can help us move it along. This was basically a situation whereby there was trying to be identification of the body.
That's correct.
And the person.
Yes.
And there were questions about any kind of tattooing on his body and things of that nature.
That's correct.
What came as a result of that discussion between the West Dallas Police Department, Mr. Dahmer, and yourself?
He recalled that Mr. Dockstader had two scars right above his nipples at the size of a cigarette, and upon further investigation and questioning the family, they did recall this, and Mr. Dockstader was subsequently identified as being a victim.
Was that because of two cigarette burns that were in his nipple area?
And the appendix and the 75% identification of the photo.
Okay. How old was Mr. Dockstader? 14, 15?
Yes.
Okay. He then went on to talk about the fourth victim, Mr. Sears. And there was a question asked him about when he decided to start keeping the skulls and why at the top of that page, please.
Yes.
What did he say reference to that?
He stated he did not keep anything from any individuals until number 4, Anthony Sears, at which time he decided to keep the skull for remembrance. He stated that when he did keep more items of these individuals, it was because he liked them more or they appealed to him more.
Okay, go on and tell us, was there some discussion relative to an incident that involved a gentleman that was not a victim of a homicide?
Yes.
Would you tell us about that, please?
This time, Mr. Dahmer was questioned regarding Mr. Flowers. He informed them that when he met Mr. Flowers told him he was a counselor for the retarded. He also told them that he had had car problems, at which time Mr. Dahmer stated they could take a cab back to his grandmother's house, where he would get his grandmother's car and come back to give him a jump. He stated that when he went into the house, after he turned off the alarm, Mr. Dahmer gave him a cup of coffee in the basement, and the coffee had the sleeping potion in it.
This Flowers incident was not a homicide and never ended up a homicide.
That's correct.
And Mr. Dahmer, in spite of being advised not to talk about it, talked about it anyway.
Yes, he did.
Okay, continue on, please.
Mr. Dahmer stated he told Mr. Flowers that they were going into the basement so that they would not wake up his grandmother. They agreed on light sex. Mr. Flowers had taken his shirt off, and then the pill started to take effect. Mr. Dahmer stated that he gave Flowers as many as 12 sleeping pills in the coffee, and he passed out about a half an hour after he arrived at the residence. He stated they had been doing body rubbing before he drank the coffee. He stated Mr. Flowers passed out, at which time he pulled his pants down. He does not recall if he had oral sex with him or not, but in the morning his grandmother saw him, at which time he figured that Mr. Flowers was too big and didn't want to cause a commotion, and his grandmother saw him, so he did not kill him. He stated he walked him to the bus stop on 57th and Lincoln, gave him $1 to get on the bus, but he did admit taking $80 from Mr. Flowers, but stated that he left other monies in his wallet. Denied taking any jewelry from him, but stated if any jewelry had fallen off Mr. Flowers, he would have thrown it away. He stated that Mr. Flowers wasn't his type, and that was another reason why he did not kill him.
Okay, I'd like you to go on to page 141, please. And tell us, was there some questions about the incident with Mr. Tuomi?
Yes. A citizen brought a small suitcase into the Detective Bureau indicating that this was a suitcase that may have been used in the Mr. Tuomi homicide. We asked Mr. Dahmer what happened to the suitcase, and he stated that he purchased a suitcase and it was measured approximately 3 feet by 3 feet by 1 foot. It had wheels on it. And after he disposed of the body of Mr. Tuomi, he ripped up the suitcase, cut it up, and threw it in the trash so it could not be used again.
There was some further discussion. What's the next area of discussion that had to do relative with the matters that we're talking about here in court that are not immaterial and irrelevant? By that I mean things, just general telephone nature calls and things like that.
Well, we called various agencies, including Chicago and Milwaukee Police Departments. He stated on July 3rd and 4th, he placed calls to the Chicago Police Department to report his wallet stolen or missing so that he could obtain an excuse at his place of employment because he missed work.
Okay. What else did he tell you about making calls?
In May of '91, he made a call to the Milwaukee Police Department and stated because he wanted to report a $5 robbery. He also admitted to calling several barrel companies in the area and also a barrel company in Chicago to get information regarding barrels. He subsequently purchased a barrel in Milwaukee so that he could dispose of the body parts. He also admitted placing calls to a bookstores in the city, and he placed calls to these various bookstores. In fact, did purchase handcuffs and items from the bookstores and handcuffs from the Army Navy surplus store.
He bought, he told you where he bought the handcuffs?
Yes.
Did he make that plural or singular?
He made a set of handcuffs, he said.
A set of handcuffs. So
Right.
that means one.
Indicating
set.
one hand, right.
Okay. Tell us what the next thing he told you about regarding his activity in the bookstores.
We questioned him regarding his activities in the bookstore, and he stated that it just started off by looking at magazines, then progressed to watching videos, and continued to meeting people in the back room of bookstores, having sex, and then going into the bathhouses. He stated he spent a lot of time at these bookstores until recently when he began killing his victims. We then questioned him regarding the chemicals he used to dispose of the bodies, or the ones that were found in his residence. He stated that he bought the formaldehyde about 2 months ago from the store on 27th and Kilbourne. He also bought the ether and the chloroform from there 4 months ago. He stated he would get his prescriptions filled at Walgreens and another drugstore, and he would obtain the Soilex from the hardware store. He stated he called the hardware store regarding the chemicals to use to remove the skin from the skull of a rabbit, at which time they suggested the Soilex, and that's when he started using it. He also called taxidermy places to find out what they used. He stated he bought the Soilex from the hardware store on 4th and Walnut, and he bought the muriatic acid from the hardware and True Value stores.
Now you started talking to Mr. Dahmer about his frame of mind on letting people go or not.
Yes.
Can you tell us what he said reference to that?
Mr. Dahmer was asked whether or not he has let anyone go, or in fact had sex with individuals without killing them during this killing spree. He stated that other than the ones that got away, there were possibly no more than 10 that he had sex with and had not killed due to the fact that they were possibly, he did not like them that much, or he did not have any sleeping pills left. He stated that most of the time it was because he did not like them and he did not want them around. The most recent one that he had sex with without harming the individual or attempting to drug him or kill him was a big black male truck driver, and they had a normal sexual relationship during this killing spree. He also stated that earlier on, when he first started killing, he would shop around and find someone that he liked, but near the end, compulsion took over, and he would find someone and just keep them.
Tell me about this alleged big black male truck driver. Did you ever find out if that was true or not?
No, he did not.
Did you attempt to find out who that might be?
We had no way of locating him. He did not know where he was from. He had no more information except that he was a big black male truck driver that he met.
Did he tell you how many times he had had a normal relationship with him? How many times he had been with this gentleman?
He said once.
Oh, once. Okay, good. Continue on, please. Didn't he say something to you about his cooperation and why he was cooperating?
During the interview, Mr. Dahmer was given coffee, cigarettes, soda, and he again stated that he wished to cooperate fully in our investigation, to answer any questions that we had, and to help identify the last victim, and to ease the pain of their families. He was then taken back to the jail.
He then again meets up with the West Allis Police Department, who had additional questions, correct?
That's correct.
Tell us what he says answers to their questions.
He was asked whether or not he missed drinking since he's been locked up. This time he stated he did not drink every day, only when he committed the offenses. He informed Mr. Dahmer that he did not have to say anything regarding this due to the fact that his attorney had already left, and he stated it didn't make any difference, that he would cooperate with us and has cooperated and has made statements against his interests without his attorney not being present. Therefore, he is willing to talk to us about his drinking. He stated that when he killed these individuals, he was always drunk, and the drinking helped him get into the frame of mind and made it easier for him. He indicated that he didn't drink every day, but when he planned to get someone, he would start drinking after he planned, and then he was usually drunk when he killed them. He stated that he even drank when he was cutting up the bodies. He again stated that it helped to make it easier when he was doing this. He related that he feels that he is not an alcoholic, and the reason he was drinking was due to the fact that he committed these terrible offenses.
Once again, there's a further discussion about this young man who had the 2 scars, right?
Yes.
We have already talked about that.
That's correct.
Okay, tell us what happens. Now we're up to what date on the reporting system?
August 21st.
Okay, this is now virtually almost a 1-month anniversary date.
Yes.
Shy of 1 day. Tell us what happens at that time. What he tells you on that day?
Mr. Dahmer was questioned regarding the muriatic acid which was found in his apartment on the night of his arrest, that being approximately 16 gallons of muriatic acid. He related that he bought this acid at Ace Hardware. He took a vet cab to the hardware store in order to purchase it. He related he intended to use this muriatic acid in the 57-gallon industrial strength drum which he had previously purchased in order to dispose of the body parts which he had in his apartment. At this time, he realized that because of the loss of his job and the fact that he was out of money, he would soon have to leave his apartment. Therefore, he decided that he would completely destroy all evidence of his deeds by mixing water and muriatic acid in the 57-gallon drum, and thereby placing all of the body parts which he had in his apartment in the drum at one time, including all the skulls which he had saved and boiled, the complete torsos which he had saved and boiled from his victims, and the victims who were recently killed and already placed in a drum. He felt that by doing this, he would completely rid himself of any evidence of his crimes, and after the bones and flesh had decalcified, he would be able to pour them down the toilet, completely destroying all evidence. He felt he would be thrown out of his apartment because of the lack of funds, and he would start a new life by going to the Salvation Army where he could stay. He thought for about a month until he could find another job and get on his feet. This time he was questioned as to whether he truly believed that by destroying all the evidence and starting over again, if he would be able to stop committing the homicides in which he had been involved in. This time, Mr. Dahmer related,
Now, this is a quote.
quote, "If I am to be honest with myself, I would have to admit that if I again was set up in another apartment and had the opportunity, I probably would not be able to stop. I feel that it is almost a driving compulsion to commit these acts, and I probably would have started up again after some time."
This is the end of
Unquote.
quote.
Mr. Dahmer again stated, in a quote, "Obviously, a power higher than myself has been fed up with my deeds and decided it was time for me to be stopped." That's the end of quote. We questioned him regarding the fact that the flesh on the feet of several of his victims seemed to be cut off, and a medical examiner had made inquiries as to why this was done. We asked him this question and related that by cutting the flesh off the sole and heel of the foot of his victim, it was easier for the muriatic acid to work on the bones of the foot to decalcify and turn it into a sludgy substance. He related that the skin on the bottom of the foot is extremely tough and it took more time for the muriatic acid to work through, and that was the reason why he cut the flesh off the feet of his victims.
Going on to what he told you on later part of that day, there was a narrative where you started talking to him about his place of living and why he was there and how he got along with his neighbors, right?
Right.
I want you to tell us what he said.
Mr. Dahmer related that he moved into the residence at 924 North 25th Street. He picked the area because it was low rent and it was close to work. He related that he had no idea who was living in the apartment complex at the time and thought it was mostly family members. He did state that he knew most of the tenants were black due to the area. He related that he is not prejudiced, nor does he dislike blacks. He related that he was harassed by blacks in the neighborhood and those people who made remarks to him he did not care for, but personally he did not feel he was prejudiced.
What he was telling you was that he didn't like the people that made remarks to him, but he had no prejudice other than against those people, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know of anything to the contrary?
No, I don't.
Go ahead.
He related that the security items in his party, namely a brown alarm which was on the door, was purchased from Radio Shack. He related that he also purchased a Black & Decker alarm from a Black & Decker distribution center and a fake video camera from another store, which he did not recall. He stated he purchased all of these items approximately 1 year ago. Again, regarding the chemicals that were recovered, he purchased them at Lobbs on 27th and Kilbourne, where he got the formaldehyde, also a pint of ether and a pint of chloroform.
Okay, now, I want you to go down to page 147, where Mr. Dahmer talks about his situation relative to some questions about Tracy Edwards.
Mr. Dahmer denied that he talked to any prisoners about the individual known as Tracy Edwards, who was the man who got away wearing the handcuffs.
I understand the reason you asked that question is there must have been some allegation that he did talk to some other inmates about Tracy Edwards?
Yes.
And you asked him about it and he denied that?
That's correct.
And what does he go on to say?
He related that he did not talk to anyone regarding him, nor did he make any statements that it was all Edward's fault. He also denies having a dislike for blacks and using the word nigger.
Now, those questions were asked of him because somebody had made statements to the contrary.
That's correct.
Did you ever do an investigation to see whether or not Mr. Dahmer was not telling you the truth when he answered your questions?
No, these statements came from outside sources, and we questioned him regarding that. We had no specific individual making these statements.
So when he said that he had no dislike for blacks and he did not use the word nigger, as far as you know, he was telling the truth.
That's correct.
Continue on.
Mr. Dahmer also related that the only visitors he had received are his attorneys, his father, and members of the Milwaukee Police Department. He also related that he is quiet and he will not talk to anyone regarding this investigation other than his attorney and ourselves, me and Detective Kennedy.
Okay. Let's go on to the next report on page 149 concerning the allegation of the drugging of a human being in one of the bathhouses. We don't have to mention who the person is, but let's just choose to.
We questioned him regarding a person he had drugged in one of the bathhouses. Mr. Dahmer related that he did not recall the name of the individual he met in the bathhouse, but
He said did not remember the names of the individuals he met in the bathhouses.
Yes.
Okay.
But he did recall drugging one of the individuals in the bathhouse on 7th in Wisconsin. When the subject did not awake after a couple of hours, he became concerned and had the people in the bathhouse call the paramedics, who took the subject to the hospital thinking he had overdosed. He was then questioned if he was experiencing any withdrawals, not only from alcohol, but also from not using the sleeping pill. And he related he has not experienced any withdrawals from alcohol, nor from the use of not using a sleeping pill, because he does not take the pills regularly. He related that he would take one pill about every 6 months, and this was only when he could not sleep. He related the main reason he had the sleeping pill was to use on the people that he brought to his apartment or the ones he met in the bathhouses. He related he first started to experiment by using 3 pills on the people, then he used as many as 7 on some of them. He related that he would bluff the doctors into prescribing the pills for him because he would tell them that he could not sleep, but he never used them. He figures the last time he did take one of the pills was approximately 6 months ago. Mr. Dahmer related that he did have a black male over to his residence about 1 month before this incident with the victim, whom he described as Cash D. He related that at this time he had mixed a drink for this black male, but he mixed up the cups and he subsequently drank the wrong drink. He stated he passed out, and when he awoke the next morning, he was missing $300 and the black male was missing from his residence. He related that he never reported this incident to the police. He also related that the only drugs or any other pills that he took were vitamins. He denies going into a bar in Milwaukee on East Wells Street, and only stated he only went into Carol's Bar in Chicago once, and that was on 7/6/91 or 7/5/91 when he picked up the victim, Weinberger. We then asked him if he could recall his home phone number, and he could not. We then questioned him as to whether or not his father had come to his...
Let me ask you, you asked him if he could recall what his home phone number was, and he said he could not. And then he said, therefore, or at least there was a conclusion, therefore he was unable to give his home phone number to anyone.
Right.
Why was that a matter of interest?
Because we had received calls from people stating that Mr. Dahmer had given them his phone number, and out of the blue, we just asked him what his phone number was, and he couldn't recall it. Therefore, these people were just giving us prank calls. We were trying to establish whether or not it was true or not.
So you were doing that to see if you were getting true or false information from these people?
That's correct.
Continue on, please.
We then questioned him as to whether his father had ever come to his grandmother's residence on South 57th Street, and if he ever found any bones in the garage. He related his father did come there regarding the smell which was in the garage, and upon checking the garage, his father did find some smashed up bones, but Jeffrey told him that they were from a raccoon. He related that these bones were actually the backbone and the arm bones of one of the victims. We questioned Mr. Dahmer regarding 2 Hispanic males who had called our department and related that he had approached them on approximately 7/21/91 at the Grand Avenue Mall. Jeff related he did remember asking 2 Hispanic males at the mall to come to his place to be photographed, and he offered them about $100. He related that he did stop at a liquor store, bought some beer, and they all got into a cab. He thought the Hispanic males were approximately 18 years of age. While they were in the cab proceeding to his residence, he stated the Hispanic males jumped out of the cab in the vicinity of 22nd and Wisconsin and walked away very fast. He stated that they must have changed their minds. Dahmer related that on this occasion, he was just interested in taking their pictures because there was 2 of them together. He stated that if we recall the victim whom he met on 27th Street, that it was sometime after the winter, and it was at this time the victim whom he had skinned. He stated that it took him approximately 2 hours to do that. We asked him why he wanted to skin the subject, and he related that he wanted to try it, and he wanted to keep the skin. He stated that when he started to cut it, he cut it from the rear of the back of the neck area, and then kind of peeled it away. He related it was like skinning a chicken. He stated that when he pulled off the face, he tried to be careful, but when it came off, it was just like a mask. Then used 2 items to try and preserve the skin. He used a box of borax and 7 boxes of salt. He related that he mixed these together in water, placed the skin in there, which he removed from the victim in this solution with the intention of saving it. But he left it in this solution too long and it became mushy and he had to dispose of it.
Come a time then when your discussion was interrupted for whatever reason and resumed because Jeffrey Dahmer told you there was some more things he wanted to tell you.
That's correct.
So a little bit later, he continued to tell you what he said he would talk to you about after he finished doing some other things.
Yes.
What did he tell you?
Mr. Dahmer went on to relate that he originally told us that he had only eaten 1 bicep of one of the victims. He related that there were other times in which he had eaten part of the victim. He related that the first time was a person he identified as Cash D, who was Raymond Smith. He related that he ate this victim's heart and that it tasted kind of spongy. He indicated that the next person was a person he met by the bookstore, victim number 7, Ernest Miller. He related this was a person he really liked. He indicated that he had filleted his heart and kept it in the freezer, and he also kept his bicep. He indicated that he had eaten the thigh muscle of this subject, but it was so tough he could hardly chew it. He then purchased a meat tenderizer and used it on the bicep. He stated that it tasted like beef or a filet mignon. The next person who he was going to eat, and who he in fact did eat, was victim number 15, Oliver Lacey. He stated that on this victim he ate his bicep. He stated it also tasted like a filet mignon. He stated that he would tenderize it first. He stated that he did keep this individual's heart and bicep too. We asked him if he had eaten the body parts just plain or how they were prepared, and he stated he would use salt, pepper, and A1 steak sauce on them. He stated the reason he ate these parts was because he was curious, but then it was because he wanted to make them a part of him. He stated that this way he could keep these people with him. He stated that he ate only the people that he really liked, and he wanted them to be a part of him or with him all the time. Mr. Dahmer related that he did not try to eat any other of the victims. He stated that the 2 hearts in the freezer and the bicep muscles recovered in the freezer would have been eaten by him had he not been arrested by the police. He related that he does not think there is anything else that he could recall to tell us at this time. We asked him why he had not informed us of eating these various body parts when he first started, and when he first stated that he only ate the 1 bicep, and he stated he did not want to talk about it because it was not very appealing, and he did not want us to think less of him. We advised Mr. Dahmer that we had spent enough time with him where we would be willing to sit down and talk with him regarding any of his activities relative to this investigation or any other activities which he can recall and wishes to talk to us about. Mr. Dahmer related there was nothing else that he can recall relative to this investigation, nor is he involved in any other homicides, sexual assaults, or attacks on anyone. He stated if some individuals do come forward indicating that he made requests to them to pose for him, he states that that is true because he had approached many other people, but he has not killed anyone else, nor has he had any other sexual relations with anyone without their consent. He stated that the other individuals whom he had had sexual relations with or sexually touched or rubbed was done with mutual consent, and those were the individuals whom he did not desire and whom he let leave his apartment. Mr. Dahmer related that if he does recall anything, he will contact the sheriff and inform them to contact us to give us the information. He was then returned to the sheriff's department.
The next time you talk to him is on the 22nd relative to a situation involving something in Chicago. Does that have anything to do with this case? That would be on page 154.
Yes.
Okay, will you tell us about it, please?
Regarding information received from Chicago, a Hispanic male related that he was frequenting a bar located in the gay area of Chicago known as the Vortex, V-O-R-T-E-X. While he was in the Vortex bar, he met the suspect, Dahmer, who offered to pay him $800 if he would accompany him back to Milwaukee via the Greyhound bus and allow him to take nude photos of him and have him spend the night with him. He related that this occurred on a Sunday evening. He believes that it happened during the Gay Pride Parade, which was approximately June 30th, 1991. He related that the subject told him, "I'm not leaving tonight until I find someone." He refused to go with Mr. Dahmer. However, he is positive that the subject was Mr. Dahmer who approached him. When questioned regarding this, Mr. Dahmer admits he does recall talking to a white or Hispanic male at the tavern known as the Vortex in Chicago. He stated he was extremely drunk that day. However, he does recall that he offered an individual $800 to have him return with him. He related that although the subject did not accompany him, he met one of the victims, who was identified as Matt Turner, at the Greyhound bus station in Chicago and returned to Milwaukee with him.
There was a discussion that took place commencing at pages 156 relative to the odors both at his grandmother's house and at his building and his dealings with the building superintendent about those odors. Will you tell us about that, please?
We questioned Mr. Dahmer regarding the fact that many times throughout his criminal activities, he was in fact contacted by authorities, police, parents, superintendents of apartment buildings that he lived in, and they had in fact questioned him regarding certain aspects of his activities. The first time he was stopped by police while living in Ohio and attempting to dispose of his first victim, the officer stopped him. He was able to convince this officer that everything was all right and he in fact eluded detection. Regarding, while he was at his grandmother's house, his grandmother questioned him many times regarding his foul smells emanating from the basement, which were results of the victims which he had murdered and cut up. He related that he was able to convince her that the foul smells were because of her cat Jody. He also was questioned by his father while at his grandmother's house when his father did in fact find some of the broken bones of one of the victims in the garage, which had been placed in a bag by his grandmother's house. To this, he stated that he told his father that those were broken bones of a raccoon which he had found and cut up. He convinced his father that this activity was similar to the activity he had experimented with while he was back in Ohio at an early age in his teenage years. He stated that his father was unable to tell that they were human bones as he had used a sledgehammer and smashed them up into such small fragments that they were undetectable. He was confronted by his building supervisor in the Oxford Arms Apartments where he was staying on 25th Street relative to this foul smell. And he related that on several occasions the supervisor confronted him, and at one time he showed him some rotten meat which he had in his freezer, stating that the freezer had gone out and the rotten meat was the cause for this foul smell. Regarding another time he was confronted by the supervisor, he showed him a plastic garbage container which he had been using in order to dissolve the human bones and flesh with the muriatic acid. However, upon showing this to the supervisor, it was empty, and although it had that foul odor, he stated that he used this container in order to change the water in his fish tank, and at times the dead fish were left in there. He related that it seemed to appease him at this time, and the building supervisor just told him to get rid of the bucket, which he promptly did. Regarding the incident with the police and the Asian boy, Conrad Simpson phone, he related that although he was extremely nervous during the time of the questioning by police, he put on a very calm attitude and felt he was able to convince the police that it was a lover's problem between two homosexuals. He related that due to the fact that he was able to convince all these people in positions of authority, his parents, neighbors who questioned him regarding his activities, it gave him a feeling that he could get away with his crimes. He felt that he had the ability to make people see a phase of him that only he wished them to see, and this encouraged him to continue on with his crimes, feeling that he would never be caught. We asked him if he shared with anyone these activities or felt the need to ever tell anyone, and he stated no, stating that these ideas were all his own. He related he did not get these ideas for cutting up people or killing people from movies, TVs, books, or magazines. He stated that they were strictly out of his head. He related that he liked the fact that these ideas were his own and they were uniquely his own. He felt power in the fact that they were his own private thoughts, and that while he was doing this, he felt it was his own private world and belonged to no one else but him. Due to the fact that he states he was always a loner, he took pleasure in the fact of knowing that he had a private world of his own and no one else knew about. When questioned further regarding the subject who was completely skinned, he related that the skin of the human being is easily detached. He stated that much of the way you would detach skin from a chicken which you are planning to cook. He stated that after the initial incision, you could pull the skin and it would pull off the muscle tissue of the body easily. The only time it was difficult was when he was pulling the skin around the joints. At this time, he would use a small paring knife to carefully cut the skin around the joint portion of the body. Regarding the fact that the skin was completely taken off the head of the subject, Mr. Dahmer related that he would start the incision in the lower portion of the back of the neck and slice up to the top or crown of the head. He related at this time he would pull up on either side of the skin from the incision and would easily completely pull right off the skull of the individual. He related that the only time he needed to do any real cutting would be around the facial features, that being the eyes, nose, lips, and mouth. He related that the entire skull portion of the skin came off in one complete piece. While it was off, it actually looked somewhat like a mask you can buy at a party store. He related that he kept the skin and the mask-like facial features of this subject and planned to treat them in the solution he had made up of salt and borax. He stated that he soaked them in this salt and borax solution with water for several weeks and planned to take them out and dry them to preserve them, but he kept the skin and mask-like, he wanted to keep the skin and mask-like portion of this individual's head. However, he underestimated the power of the mixture of the borax and salt, and after several weeks in the solution, the skin turned to a mushy substance, and he was unable to keep it, so he threw it out.
Detective Murphy, in the next few pages, you're asking him some general questions about people that are not parties to this matter at all, but you're also asking him the places that he went, and you have already told us about the kind of places he went in Milwaukee, correct?
Yes.
Okay, would you go to page 176, please? And for the purpose of the court, we end at 179, so we're almost at the end. Will you tell us concerning something to do with a moving company that moved him to his residence, North 25th Street, and why that was important?
Mr. Dahmer was asked which moving company had moved him to his residence at 924 North 25th Street in May of 1990, because he originally stated it was the Atlas moving van. A check with Atlas showed they had not moved him. Mr. Dahmer stated that it might have been Allied, but he is not sure, but he believes the moving company began with an A. We attempted to locate this moving company to ascertain whether or not they had any records in their computer. We then questioned him regarding his stay in Miami, Florida in 1981. He stated he was staying at the Bimini Bay Motel, Bimini, and asked him what landmarks or other hotels were in the area. He stated that the Bimini Bay Hotel was approximately 1/4 mile from the ocean. About 1/2 mile down Collins Avenue was the Newport Hotel and the Castaway Hotel. He stated that the submarine shop where he worked was approximately 5 blocks away from these hotels. He also stated that the Fontainebleau Hilton was 3 miles away on Collins Avenue. He stated that the Sunshine Submarine Shop was located like in a mini mall or semicircle off Collins Avenue. He stated you could get breakfast, lunch, or dinner at this location. He does not know if this restaurant is still presently there. He can only recall what was there at the time he was there.
I've got to ask you to go back to page 173. Attorney White had indicated to me that there is something that she feels that will be gone into, so we might as well get out this way. On the third paragraph, there was a question relative to whether or not he had ever asked a cab driver to come into his apartment for a drink after he had taken a cab home. Tell us what that cab driver said that caused you people to talk to Jeffrey Dahmer about this man.
Okay, we asked Mr. Dahmer if he ever asked a cab driver to enter his apartment for a drink after he had taken a cab home. The driver stated that he didn't drink, but he would smoke a joint, and Mr. Dahmer stated to the cab driver that he did have marijuana in his apartment, but the cab driver declined, stating that he had to work. Upon mentioning this, Mr. Dahmer stated that this did happen, but it was just a cab that he had taken home and asked the driver to come in for a sociable drink. He related that he did not intend to kill this person, only to hope that it might lead to some type of sex.
Okay. I want to ask you to read the last 2 pages. Is this ended as far as the Milwaukee Police Department talking to Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yes,
And this last interview took place on what date?
August 28th, Wednesday.
Month and a week after the discovery.
Right.
Would you read to us what the parting words were between you and Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Dahmer?
At this time, we began to question Mr. Dahmer regarding the way in which he would decide on which individuals to approach. This related to individuals that eventually became his victims. He stated that before going out for the evening, he generally would know whether or not he planned to commit a homicide. And before going out, he would prepare the sleeping pill solution by powdering it, leaving it in a glass on the countertop of his kitchen. He stated that once at the bar, he would generally drink by himself, observe the different individuals in the gay establishment. He states that it was not a matter of color, race, or ethnic heritage of any of his victims, as long as they met what he called the physical profile. He stated this was generally from mid to late teens to the mid-20s, males in medium height, slender build, and generally smooth skin. He stated upon sitting in the taverns and drinking, he would notice one, maybe 2 or 3 who fit his profile and who he found attractive. He also stated that he generally looked for individuals that were alone and not with a tight-knit group.
Not with a tight-knit group?
Yes.
Okay.
He states that upon detecting which victim he found attractive,
Upon deciding.
he would generally wait until approximately bar time, which would be the closing of the tavern. And then as the patrons were filing out, he would approach the victims and ask them if they wished to accompany him home for either pictures, sexual contact, or for cocktails, many of the times offering them money. He states this was a general routine except for times when he met some of his victims on the street in front of the bookstores, and then the same routine as far as offering money for sex, photographs, or cocktails. Regarding the individual picked up at the mall, that being Conarac, Simpson, and Phone, he states that he had been hanging around the Grand Avenue Mall that day and was leaving the mall, exiting the Wisconsin Avenue exit. As he was walking out, the victim, Simpson Phone, was entering the mall. He states upon seeing this individual, he was immediately attracted to him and struck up a conversation. It was at this time that he offered him money to return with him to his apartment for photographs. He states regarding other times in the mall, there were several times that he had walked throughout the mall and would look for individuals that fit his physical profile. And he would approach them, offer them money. However, many of the people he talked with and offered money to and asked them to return to his apartment, would refuse him. Some even were hostile towards him. At this time, this interview terminated.
You had 60 hours of talks with him.
Yes,
You ever cry?
not in my presence, no.
Other than the way you have described him, did he have many mood alterations?
Yes, he changed, well, he became more friendly. He accepted us. He wasn't afraid of us.
You've never made note in any of the notes that you put down that at any time did he make up any hearing voices, hallucinations, delusions, the devil made me do it, nothing of that nature at all at any time, correct?
No, he did not.
In spite of the fact that his lawyers were there often,
Yes,
that his lawyers were talking to him when you weren't there,
that's correct.
he had been seen by a doctor for a couple of different reasons,
Yes,
a psychologist,
yes,
never made up anything to give you reason that he was trying to phony up a mental insanity defense, correct?
correct.
Just answered your questions, answered your questions, became friendly with you and Detective Kennedy. Whatever you asked him, he answered you.
That's correct.
Was he evasive?
No,
You know, as an experienced police officer who has talked to people many times over the years, that instead of Murphy and Kennedy, if it was Jones and Smith, there might have been all kinds of different things talked about. But for the most part, your job is to get as much information as you can based upon the way you conduct an investigation.
that's correct.
You know from your knowledge and experience that he could not have possibly told you every single solitary thing about every single solitary moment of his life, correct? You
That's
know that.
correct.
So that later, did you find out that there was additional information that he was giving to other law enforcement people or to doctors or whatever? Did you learn that?
Yes, I did.
Did it come to surprise you?
Well, this was after we had finished interviewing him. We had no more contact with him. And he had told us during the interviews he was truthful with us, and
Sure.
that's the information we had.
You know that he told the doctor, or whomever, at least he told the doctor, that he started doing some drilling, not for the purposes as what he told you, but also for the purposes of trying to create zombies. You come aware of this?
I've heard that. I became aware of it, yes.
Yes. He never told you anything like that?
No, he did not.
Okay, but he did tell you who drilled?
He did, yes.
Yes. May we approach the sidebar?
Okay, jurors, we're going to break for the weekend at this point. We'll reconvene Monday morning at 8:30. I think the bailiffs have some plans and some movies they can watch in a few